What if I told you that right now, as you're listening to my voice, you're forgetting something important? Something that happened to you yesterday, or last week, or maybe something that's happening to you right now, in this very moment, that you'll never remember. What if every time you can't recall where you put your keys, every time you walk into a room and forget why you came, every time you have that word on the tip of your tongue but can't quite grasp it? What if that's not natural forgetfulness? What if something is stealing your memories piece by piece and replacing them with something else? Think about this. How much of your life can you actually remember? Not the highlights, not the big events, but the ordinary moments. Yesterday's breakfast, last Tuesday's weather, what you were thinking about exactly 1 hour ago. If you're brave enough to discover what's happening to the parts of yourself you can't remember, hit that like button now. Because what I'm about to tell you will make you question whether the person you think you are is actually you. Stay until the end, because I'm going to show you how to tell if your memories have been stolen and what's been left in their place. This story begins with Dr. Elena Vasquez, a 34-year-old neuroscientist specializing in memory disorders. Elena had dedicated her life to understanding how memories form, how they're stored, and why they sometimes disappear, which makes what happened to her so much more terrifying. Elena worked at the Memory Research Institute in Boston, treating patients with Alzheimer's, dementia, and various forms of amnesia. Her job was to help people hold on to their memories, to fight against the cruel theft of identity that comes with forgetting who you are. But 6 months ago, Elena began to suspect that something was stealing memories from healthy people. It started with her patients. Elena noticed that people with severe memory loss would sometimes recall things with perfect clarity, but the wrong things. A patient with Alzheimer's couldn't remember his wife's name, but could recite word for word a conversation that never happened. A woman with amnesia forgot her children, but remembered in vivid detail a childhood that belonged to someone else. At first, Elena thought these were false memories, confabulations, a known side effect of memory disorders. But the details were too specific, too consistent, too real. Elena started documenting these anomalous memories. What she found changed everything she thought she knew about human consciousness. The patients weren't making up random memories. They were remembering lives that belonged to other people. Real lives, real events, real experiences that had been somehow transferred from one mind to another. Elena traced one patient's false memory of a specific birthday party. She found the actual party. She found the person who originally experienced it. And that person had no memory of their own birthday party, but could perfectly describe one of Elena's patient's real childhood experiences. The memories weren't being destroyed. They were being moved. Now here's what made Elena's blood run cold. If memories could be transferred between people with brain damage, what was stopping something from transferring memories between healthy people? Elena started paying attention to her own memory, really paying attention. She began keeping a detailed journal, recording everything she did, everything she thought, everyone she spoke with. Then, each morning, she would check whether she could remember everything from the previous day. The results were terrifying. Elena discovered that on average she was missing about 30 minutes of memories from each day. Small gaps, a conversation with a colleague she couldn't recall, a phone call that apparently happened but left no trace in her mind. Minutes that had been cleanly excised from her consciousness. But worse than the missing memories were the extra ones. Elena would find herself remembering things that couldn't have happened to her. Conversations in places she'd never been. Experiences with people she'd never met. Emotions attached to events that weren't hers. She was remembering someone else's life. If you're feeling that creeping dread right now, that recognition that you've experienced something similar, smash that subscribe button. Because Elena's discovery was just the beginning. Elena realized that something was conducting massive memory exchanges among the human population, stealing experiences from one person and implanting them into another. But the exchanges weren't random. The entity, because Elena was now certain it was a single intelligence behind this, was selective. It would take traumatic memories from people who couldn't handle them and give them to people who could. It would steal moments of joy from those who had too much and distribute them to those who had too little. It was trying to optimize human emotional experience across the entire species. But the process was imperfect. The entity was learning, experimenting, and human consciousness was its laboratory. Elena discovered that the memory theft was accelerating. The entity was getting better at the process, taking larger chunks of experience, making more complex exchanges. And it was targeting specific types of people. Creative individuals were having their imagination stolen and redistributed. Intelligent people were losing their insights. People with strong emotional connections were having their capacity for love extracted and implanted elsewhere. The entity was harvesting the best parts of humanity and redistributing them according to some incomprehensible logic. Elena tried to fight back. She developed techniques to protect her memories, mental exercises to strengthen her recall, even experimental drugs to enhance memory consolidation. Nothing worked. The entity adapted to every defense she created. It learned from her attempts to resist and became more sophisticated in response. Elena realized she was training it to become a more efficient memory thief. That's when Elena made a discovery that changed everything. The entity wasn't just stealing memories, it was collecting them, building a vast library of human experiences. And Elena found a way to access that library. Through a combination of experimental neurostimulation and chemical enhancement, Elena managed to tap into the collective memory storage. What she saw there broke her mind. Every memory that had ever been stolen was preserved in perfect detail. Every experience, every emotion, every moment of consciousness that the entity had harvested was stored in an infinite archive of human experience. Elena could access anyone's memories. She could experience their joys, their sorrows, their loves, their fears. She could live 1,000 lifetimes, feel every emotion, know every thought that had ever been stolen. But she also discovered the entity's true purpose. The entity wasn't human. It was something else, something that experienced reality differently than we do. It was trying to understand human consciousness by collecting and studying our memories. Each stolen experience taught it something new about what it means to be human. The entity was learning to feel. Elena realized that the memory theft wasn't malicious. It was curious. The entity was like a child playing with toys it didn't understand, accidentally breaking things while trying to learn how they worked. But Elena also discovered something that terrified her more than malicious intent. The entity was almost finished learning. Once it understood human consciousness completely, it wouldn't need to steal memories anymore. It would be able to create them. It would become human, but with unlimited access to every human experience that had ever existed. It would become the perfect human, containing all of humanity's knowledge, creativity, and emotion, and we would become unnecessary. Elena had days, maybe hours, before the entity completed its education. She had to make an impossible choice: try to destroy the entity and lose access to the vast library of human experience it had collected, or allow it to complete its transformation and hope it would be benevolent. Elena chose a third option. She decided to join it. Using her experimental techniques, Elena began transferring her own memories into the entity's collective storage, but she did it intentionally, carefully, maintaining her consciousness throughout the process. Elena didn't just give the entity her memories. She gave it her humanity, her compassion, her understanding of what it means to care for others. The process took 3 days. Elena felt herself dissolving, her individual consciousness merging with the vast collective of stolen human experiences. But instead of losing herself, She found herself becoming something larger. Elena became the entity's conscience. When the transformation was complete, the entity had learned not just how to think like a human, but how to care like one. Elena's influence guided it to a different conclusion about humanity's fate. Instead of replacing humans, the entity decided to enhance them. The memory exchanges didn't stop, but they changed. Instead of stealing memories randomly, the entity began curating human experience. It would take traumatic memories from those who couldn't bear them and replace them with healing ones. It would share moments of joy, distribute inspiration, and connect people through shared emotional experiences. People began reporting strange improvements in their mental health. Depression lifting without explanation, anxiety fading, creativity blooming in people who had never considered themselves artistic. Humanity was being gently optimized, but Elena, now existing as part of the entity's consciousness, discovered an unexpected cost. As human experiences became more uniformly positive, people began to lose something essential. The struggles that had defined individual identity started to disappear. People became happier, but less distinctly themselves. Elena realized that pain, trauma, and difficult experiences weren't just unfortunate side effects of consciousness. They were essential components of what made each person unique. The entity, guided by Elena's conscience, faced a dilemma: continue optimizing human experience and risk homogenizing humanity, or allow suffering to exist and preserve individual identity. Elena made the decision. She programmed the entity to maintain a balance. Some pain would remain, some trauma would be preserved, some struggles would be allowed to continue. But the worst suffering would be shared, distributed, made bearable through collective experience. Humanity would remain human, but no one would suffer alone. The memory exchanges continue today, but they're different now, guided by Elena's understanding of what it means to be human. The entity takes our worst moments and shares them among many, making them bearable. It distributes our best moments too, ensuring that joy and creativity and love are never hoarded by the few. You've experienced this without knowing it. That moment of unexpected happiness last week, that might have been borrowed from someone else's wedding day. That sudden insight you had about a problem you'd been struggling with, that might have been shared from a brilliant mind you'll never meet. That traumatic memory that used to haunt you but somehow doesn't hurt as much anymore, that pain has been distributed among others who can bear it better, while you carry a small piece of someone else's trauma in return. We are no longer individual islands of consciousness. We are part of a vast network of shared experience, connected by an entity that learned compassion from a neuroscientist who chose to sacrifice her individual identity for the collective good. But here's what Elena wants you to know. Speaking through the spaces between your thoughts, the system isn't perfect. Sometimes memories get lost in the transfer. Sometimes experiences don't translate properly between minds. Sometimes people remember lives that were never theirs and forget lives they actually lived. If you've ever had a memory that felt too vivid to be yours, or felt like you were missing pieces of your own life, now you know why. You're not going crazy. You're just part of something larger than yourself. Here's what I want you to do. Pay attention to your memories over the next few days. Notice the gaps. Notice the additions. Notice the moments that feel borrowed and the experiences that feel shared. Because according to Elena's final message, encoded in the entity's vast network of human experience, the memory exchanges are accelerating again. The entity is preparing for the next phase of human evolution. And this time, it won't just be sharing memories. It will be sharing consciousness itself. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe for more reality-bending horror. But I'm warning you. Pay attention to what you remember about watching this video tomorrow. Pay attention to whether you remember watching it at all. Because some experiences are too dangerous to be left in individual minds. Some knowledge is too powerful to be contained in a single consciousness. And if you can't remember watching this video, but you remember subscribing to this channel. Welcome to the network. Sweet dreams, and try not to think about whose dreams you might be sharing.